There are now more than 80,000 confirmed cases in the US, just shy of the numbers in China and Italy. More than 1,100 people have died. New York State is the epicenter. It's now counted more than 37,000 positive cases. That's almost half the total for the whole US. The state's also recorded its biggest daily rise in deaths, 100 people in the past 24 hours, bringing the overall number there to 385. Here's New York's Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Older, sicker patients who are staying on ventilators longer, they usually have a worse outcome, right? And I think people get that from their usual experience. What we're seeing now is that is happening. We've had people on for a very long time, and they haven't gotten better. And they are passing away. So the number of deaths is at 385. It's up from 285. And since we still have a large number of people on ventilators for a long period of time, the experts expect that number to continue to increase.
Well, emergency services are being inundated. Magazine writer Michael Brendan Doherty, he sent out this tweet. It's worth a look. Last night, emergency services in New York took 6,406 medical calls, the highest volume ever. That's more than on 9/11. Well, New York City is scrambling to prepare hospitals for an influx of new patients. At one hospital in Queens, people have died inside the emergency room while waiting for a bed. A refrigerated truck has been stationed outside to hold the bodies of the dead. Pretty grim reality, really, in New York. Let's take a quick look at what is happening there. This is one hospital, queues outside, people waiting to get tested. 13 coronavirus patients have died here, just this hospital, in the last 24 hours. Another hospital saw equipment going in there. This is in Manhattan too, actually a makeshift morgue there too, which is pretty sobering. And down here, this is Miami, and this is a huge field hospital, essentially, that's being built. Up to 250 COVID-19 patients could be treated here at a time once that is all finished. Now, getting a bed in a hospital is one issue. The availability of ventilators is another. Here's Governor Cuomo again.
The number of ventilators we need is so astronomical. It's not like they have them sitting in the warehouse in the federal government. There is no stockpile available.
Well, alongside the physical disease affecting tens of thousands of Americans is the economic impact, which affects millions right across the country, of course. Almost 3.3 million Americans filed unemployment claims last week. That's a record. It's more than 4 times, actually, the previous record. You see how that compares to the past 20 years or so in this graph. And this graph, even more striking. This is from CNBC. It shows the past 50 years, and you can see the spike. Well, our North America editor, John Sopel, shared that graph. Let's take a look at what he said about it. I've never seen a graph like this. This is the weekly US jobs data going back 50 years. The rise today, less a spike, more a sky rocket. And now our North America reporter, Anthony Zerka, let's try and get his tweet up because his is interesting to read. He says the latest unemployment numbers were predicted to be bad. They turned out to be catastrophic. And catastrophic is a strong word perhaps, but that's what he's using, and this is where he's using it. This is his article, well worth a read if you get a chance. I'm just going to show you one quote from it. The government-ordered shutdown hasn't just shuttered businesses temporarily, it has vaporized the jobs of millions of Americans, many of whom are the particularly vulnerable hourly service workers who live paycheck to paycheck. And he says the test will now be whether the multi-trillion-dollar relief will do enough, quickly enough. Well, here's Samir Hussain, who's in New York for us.
It is absolutely incredible. We are talking about 3.3 million Americans lost their job in 1 week. Not 1 month, not 6 months, but 1 week. And it completely obliterates any previous records. Back in 1982, we saw that the highest number of weekly unemployment insurance claims were made were 665 100,000. This is just staggering, and it just goes to show just how ravaging the economic impact of the coronavirus will be right here in the United States. And remember, this is just the first real piece of economic data. It does not actually include people that are self-employed, so that means people part of the gig economy. And it also, according to some experts, it suggests that it actually doesn't really truly reflect how many people have filed for unemployment insurance, because systems were just so overloaded by this many claims that it's possible that initial claims weren't really even all accounted for in this weekly number. So it is pretty certain that we're going to see that this number is going to go up again.
And talking about numbers, we just have this update coming into us here at Outside Source. Breaking news. We can report that the US has overtaken China for coronavirus infections. The Johns Hopkins University there, which is reporting it's now overtaken China with 82,404 confirmed cases. Of course, this started in China as the epicenter, and then that moved to Europe, where the World Health Organization declared that was the center of the pandemic. It looks like it could be heading on to North America. So that just coming into us in the last couple of minutes. Well, the President, Donald Trump, has been speaking as well in the last hour or so. Let's take a listen to what he said.
Oh boy, how the world has changed. How the world has changed, right? But it's going to end up being better than ever.
So, striking an upbeat tone there. Some of his Democratic rivals have begun highlighting his previous comments he's made, downplaying the threat of the outbreak. Critics have pointed to tweets like this. So this is from earlier this month. Donald Trump said, so last year 37,000 Americans died from the common flu, averages between 27 and 70,000 per year. Nothing is shut down, life and the economy goes on. Think about that. Well, I want you to think about the fact that this tweet was sent on March the 9th. That was the same day all of Italy went into a national lockdown in a desperate effort to stop the spread of the virus. Now, two Democratic groups have started running multi-million-dollar ad campaigns in swing states criticising President Trump's handling of the crisis. Here's one from a group called Priorities USA, and it's not pulling any punches.
The coronavirus.
This is their new hoax.
We have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China.
One day it's like a miracle, it will disappear.
When you have 15 people, and within a couple of days it's going to be down to close to zero, we really think we've done a great job in keeping it down to a minimum.
I like this stuff. I really get it. People are surprised that I understand it.
No, I don't take responsibility at all.
And something else to bring you. After years of politicians in the USA demanding limits of movement across the border with Mexico, they might get their wish, but not quite in the way they imagined. So this is the border between the US state of Arizona and the state of Sonora in Mexico. The group there has been threatening to blockade traffic coming from the US because of a lack of screening at the border, while the US now has the third largest number of cases of coronavirus in the world, and we've just been hearing that now might have changed. There have been confirmed cases in Arizona. Mexico has just 500, excuse me. Now, Katty Kay is in Washington, has the latest on all this, but we start by chatting about those economic measures.
Look, I don't think anyone's thinking this is going to be the last of it. You had Nancy Pelosi speaking today saying that they're going to have to look at more because of those job loss numbers that you just mentioned, 3.3 million. Let me just give you some context there. That is already more jobs lost in America than were lost during the whole of the 2008-2009 financial crash. During the Great Depression at the end of the 1920s, 13 million jobs were lost, but that was over the course of 3 years. This has only been a week that the US has been shut down, and already we've got 3.3 million filing for unemployment, probably more wanting to do so. So with that kind of economic devastation, I don't think anyone on Capitol Hill is kidding themselves that this massive stimulus package that's just been put out is going to be the end of it. Yeah, interesting. Katty, we've been showing people the images from New York. Now, I want to go to there and kind of the human costs as opposed to the economic costs. And those, it's an extraordinary that New York State has become this kind of epicenter and this feuding, it seems, between the governor of New York and President Trump. Yeah, keep an eye on Louisiana, by the way, as well, because we're starting to get reports out of Louisiana, New Orleans in particular, known as a party town, that could be another big hotspot. Not as reported as much as New York, but still another problem. There is friction with governors and the federal government throughout the country, with the federal government, the White House, Donald Trump saying, look, it's up to governors and up to states to get hold of ventilators, to get hold of the protective equipment that they need. And those states saying, no, we need a coordinated effort, because here's what's going on. We've found out in the last day or two that individual states are competing against each other for ventilators, for masks, for protective gowns and shields, for goggles, and that's driving the price up of some of these protective equipment that the doctors and nurses so badly need, and which is why you've got people like Andrew Cuomo saying this shouldn't be done on a state-by-state basis. Actually, it needs some kind of federal coordination to make sure that the people that really need the supplies are getting them, and that states aren't competing with each other or competing with the federal government for the scarce resources that there are.